Hello, everyone. I hope you are doing well. Welcome to our seventh presentation, I think. Presentation because we have segmented our content in a way that will be accessible to you. But topic-wise, I don't think we have engaged more than 3 topics yet. How should you study? Study in this segmented way. It will help you to focus. So if I want to refer to ethical questions, then you know that the informed consent discussion we had is an ethical issue. You also know that consequentialism deontology is still ethics. Okay, so it's still within the framework of ethics. You would know that subjectivism, relativism, objectivism, emotivism, all the isms content or the presentation on that is still on ethics. So all the 3 together, introducing ethics, would constitute one main topic, but then cut out in a way that you can access and then you can apply. Okay. Then the next main topic would be metaphysics or metaphysical questions. For metaphysical questions, you would see that we have engaged Plato's reality versus appearance. And then we are going to now look at Ortega's Man Has No Nature. We could discuss this extensively. We could also engage it at your level as level 100 students and still deal with the trust of the matter without doing all the typically existential matters within. So we'll take it in our own stride. And I want you to engage the content proper that I have referred you to in the compiled reading. And then you will listen in to this lecture that I am putting together for you to help your understanding when we meet, God willing, in the course of this week for our in-person sessions, okay? So that is how we proceed. And if you do that, you should do very fine. You shouldn't feel all jittery about the content so far. I think that generally we are having some good time together. I'm looking at your feedbacks. People are engaging content. That is what will make you a good philosopher. So we'll project our slides as we have them, and then hopefully we should get a relatively short content, yet very, very rich for your discussion. This content could be discussed in an abstract way. It could also be discussed in a very practical way for you to grasp the essence of what the thinkers are putting across. So it is your duty now to follow me systematically and get the content. The paper by Ortega is titled Man Has No Nature. Man here in the generic sense, so no offense. Ladies, we are included. I'm referring to human being. Okay, so man has no nature. Okay, the key expansion of that, if you expanded it, Ortega seems to be saying free man as what the author of his own existence. Free man as the author of his own existence. Okay, now that is what you would want to say is the thesis of the whole paper, that you are the author of your own essence. Essence, okay, nature. Remember, we saw essence when we discussed Plato's allegory of the cave last week. Essence, the real you. Okay, Man Has No Nature is the title of Ortega's paper. And then he further says, free man is what? The author of his own essence, of his own nature, whatever that is. Okay, in quote. And we will see whether that sounds contradictory, but it's as if man doesn't have a nature. Whatever that means, we are going to get into it in a bit. But then he goes further to say, if there is anything at all called nature, quote and unquote, essence, it is that which man creates for himself. But nature proper is not changing, and nature is fixed, doesn't change. So if Ortega claims that man has no nature, then perhaps he has something else in mind, different from what we would claim he is advocating for, as in what man exists before creating an essence for himself or herself. Let's take them one after the other. So key point, One, Ortega's man has no nature. The key point in it, one. Ortega makes this claim that man has no nature. If by nature, the word nature, we refer to a fixed, take note, unchanging, preordained essence of man prior to his or her existence. Okay? See that it's almost tautologous. If we refer to something that is fixed, which doesn't change, which is preordained prior to the existence of the human being, then by that, Ortega says we cannot have that. There isn't any such for man. So if you have another conception of nature, then bring it on. But if by nature you mean this is what essentially defines human beingness. Remember Plato, we learned him recently. Essentially, the table is, so the essence of things, if you recall, is in the thing. It's that which makes it what it is, without which the thing ceases to be what it is. That was Plato, who is an essentialist. He believes things have essence, so human beings have that which makes them what they are. Every human being has the form, capital F, has the idea, capital I, has the essence of being. And that is what makes a human being what he or she is, or who he or she is, preferably what he or she is for Plato, okay? Now, Ortega says, no, no, no. If it is that, man doesn't have it. Man doesn't have any essence prior to existence. So, essentialists like Plato would rather argue that your essence precedes existence. Precedes means before, it comes before. So you have something that makes you who you are before you even exist. There is something essential to your being prior to, before existence. That is Plato. Don't get confused. Look at the word essence. So essentialist Plato would argue for essence preceding existence. Now that would not be agreeable to Ortega and his existentialist friends. So up here, you see existentialism explained. See, existentialism is not the same as essentialism. Okay? So one talks about things having an essence before existence. That would be Plato, who believes that there's the real world of forms, and that every other thing we see in the physical world of appearance is only a photocopy of the reality. So there has to be the real, which what causes or brings about the appearance. So the real human beingness and whatever it is that constitutes the form of human beingness, remember that lecture we had last week, would always precede the particular instances of what human being. So you would have a nature prior to existence. And perhaps if you are very religious, you may want to equate that before you were a blood clot in your mother's womb, I knew you. If I speak that way, perhaps I may be reiterating Plato's essentialist posturing. That is what Ortega and his friends think has been turned upside down. So Ortega and his friends who are existentialists think otherwise. Okay, let's read something on the screen now. The essentialists like Plato argue that essence precedes existence. That means one's nature or essence is already present before one exists. It is fixed, unchanging, immutable, etc. Remember the theory of forms, reality. Okay, it is fixed, unchanging, immutable. Then we say, he suggested that you do not choose what you are by nature. This is Plato. Your essence is already given prior to your existence. I think that point is well stressed. Now, Ortega is what? An existentialist. Existentialist. Okay, so existentialist is not the same as what we engaged earlier, essentialist. What does Ortega say? Ortega is an existentialist. I have stressed it again. I know why I've said it about 3 or 4 times. Not essentialist. Who is essentialist? Plato. Who is existentialist in our context now? Ortega. Okay. Now, what does Ortega say? He does not think that we should speculate about an essence or nature prior to existence. He doesn't think so. Remember, speculative approach to doing philosophy versus the analytic approach. So when we start talking about a supposed essence or nature or form that human beings have prior to existence, Ortega says we are making assumptions about supposed world somewhere. It is a speculative approach to philosophizing, but he disagrees. He and his cohort, okay? For Ortega, take note, we exist first before we create an essence for ourselves by the free choices we make. So that yesterday you were maybe an SHS student, then you studied well, then you got your school fees paid, but not who did it for you, but what you did about the situation. You studied hard, you wrote the exam, and here you are. You chose the right courses that gave you admission to the university. So you are in the university today as a result of the choices you freely made. You couldn't have made a choice if you didn't have a certain level of freedom or free will or choice. That is Ortega and his friends. So they claim that whatever you are is as a result of choices made. You are reading the text now, this should be very handy to you. You see existentialist thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, Heidegger, and Ortega. We could say so much about their philosophies, but we want just the part that helps us at level 100 students trying to get a fair idea of what the existentialist doctrine is to lead us to our next discussion on free will versus determinism. Okay, so any fair foundation that you can hold on to as you progress is all that we are doing now. That's why we can put Jean-Paul Sartre, Heidegger, and Ortega together. Their philosophies may vary, but you could still see a theme that runs through. That is existentialist in approach. They argue for what? Existence precedes essence. Existence precedes essence. You exist first. Then, today I am a lecturer by the grace of God. I may become something else by the choices I make. Then before long, I'm a mother. Before long, I'm this. Currently, I am by the grace of God. I may become a grandmother. Do I choose that or that is chosen for me? Think through that. So the very great, holy looking son may become, God forbid, a prisoner because of some choices he or she would make. And then maybe in prison, when everything looks hopeless, before long, he might choose right over there, live according to the prescriptions of the prison there, obey the rules there. Before long, he might come out as a pope, who knows, or a priest or something. So you don't have a fixed, determined, unchanging nature, says the existentialist friend. Much depends on what you are doing, the choices you are making. And they believe that it is those choices, even though you may have a past, the past may not necessarily dictate your future. You may be born by the poorest family, you may be born by the most corrupt, or you may be born into the most corrupt system. By the choices you make, free or free will choices, you will be able, says these people, to redefine your being, your nature. Okay, that is what you are reading in that King James version of a kind of a text over there. But this is virtually or chiefly what is being said there. So one comes into existence first before creating a nature or essence for itself through the choices she makes. You are what you choose to be, not what you have been made to be. Now, I prompt you, notice the role of freedom in this. The existentialist, emphasizes human persons as free and responsible agents determining their own development through acts of their will, unquote. I'm taking from a reference somewhere, the last bit, okay? So, why man has no fixed unchanging essence? Why? The essentially says man doesn't have a fixed, unchanging, stable, essence. Like this is what you are as a human being. You can't be any other thing by nature. They say no. And this is their reason, at least from Ortega's reference. Because man is not like the stone, says Ortega. A thing. You saw stone in your reading. Or if you haven't seen it, you better start looking at it now. Okay, dear friend, because you know why. You will answer questions on that text before we even engage on it. Raw content, not the philosophy of it. But what did Ortega say a stone is like? Something like that. You should be able to answer. He mentioned stone there. Now, this is the connection. Plato says human beings or man is not like the stone, which has what? A fixed, unchanging nature. A stone will lie outside there in the sun, and the sun will scorch it, and the rain will fall on it, and it will not move, cannot say anything, doesn't negotiate its bedroom. It is fixed. It is what it is. It can change. Ortega says, woo, human beings are not like that. We are not like the stone. Humans, unlike the stone, can alter. We can alter. We can change whatever has been given by the past through the choices we make. That is your paragraph 1. I'm helping you see it there. That's how he starts. Okay, so you are able to change even if you were born an orphan. You just found out that you were born an orphan. That's the past. Thank God for whatever the past gave you. But thank God that you are able to influence that. Ortega's the being of man continued. Man's being, your being, who you are, is partly natural and partly extra-natural. Your textbook will say that, the reading will say partly what? Anti-natural or extra-natural. Okay. You are partly natural. There's a part of you do not contribute. It is fixed. It is just like the stone. But in addition to the natural part, there is a part to you as a human being, which is what? Partly extra-natural. That one, you don't have it naturally. When we engage in class, we may put some flesh to it, but think about it. You were born by your parents into a specific continent. The continent may not even be a natural matter, but you may have been born with, say, I don't know what I can use without picking on someone, but say with a specific quote and unquote different ability, which some may call a disability, but you may have a different ability, or you may be born with a special ability of a kind. That is natural. You can't do much about it. Some you may be able to do something about, but some you may not be able to. Ortega and his existentialist friends will say that is just the natural part of you. And it shouldn't be an issue because you still have the extra natural, if like the anti-natural part of you, which the stone doesn't have. So it is the stone that has a nature. By nature, we mean it is the stone that has a fixed, unchanging, stable antecedent. Human beings, says Ortega, for this purpose, human beings do not have that. They have a part that is natural, but they also have the extra natural part. And together, they are able to therefore change what was given to them by their past. So you can't call it nature, says Ortega. Why? Because if it is nature, it has to be fixed. As soon as you take that from the person, you should cease to be what he is. But we are able to change it. If it is nature, as Plato defines it, the form, it is unchangeable. But this one can be changed. Can be better or worse based on the choices that people make. Because it's free will choices. And that's why right after this discussion, hopefully and God willing, we will engage the question of free will and determinism. It could have been part of this lecture, but I've told you I'm cutting them into sizable pieces so that you can get a clear picture of what that content was. Then you build on it, then you build on it with, rather than putting all into one topic and then you touch on several things in one topic. I suspect that might be difficult to grasp for a level 100 class, but we can still spread it out nicely. And then when you integrate them yourself, clarity will come. All right. So think of an intellectual center of such. You know, a center, these human beings that have an animal-like down. If you like adventure movies, then you would see that the down part is, say, like a cattle or a horse. But then when you look at this side of it, the trunk towards the bust and the head, is a human being. So this is a center, a being that is partly human, say partly animal. Or you could think of what he's saying, he tells you himself by picturing half of the boat inside the water and the other half out. So the boat is partly landed on sand and partly inside the sea. All to make the point that human beings have a part of them that you can call natural. They didn't contribute any, they were not part of the decision making. Nobody went to consult God. If you believe in God, and you should, that when you take me to earth, please, I want to be born by Asimesi or Benten, mother or father. We don't make that decision. Whether male or female now is a bit tricky because perhaps people can change what they claim to be male or female, but your parent that gave birth to you and brought you into this world, even if it is just the seed that was taken, you don't decide that. So some aspect of you, frankly speaking, are given. You can't contribute to that. And Ortega and his friends do not deny that. That's why there can be a critique of a candidate. But let's build on it. Their main point is there is still the other part of you, which is your contribution to what is supposedly your nature. What is natural in him is realized by itself. And what is not, he has to earn it himself. Okay, so the extra natural or the anti-natural should not be confused with spirit. He tells you, he says he's not talking about those wizardry terms that you people will quickly talk about spirit and soul. And he says he's not talking about that. He's talking about a project of life. He's talking about, I was a doctor, then I do some good choices, so and so and so, and then I become a professor. Then from there, if I don't do something, God forbid, I will make some wrong choices, I might become something else. In the next minute, so that is what he thinks defines you, not some. That's how he uses it, not some wizardry or some witchcraft kind of thing where we'll be talking about spirit and souls, and he says, and those nonsense. All right, let's come back to our content now. See, the extra natural part, which actually defines who you are, is an aspiration. I just said that, a project of life. Therefore, it is not fixed. You may be born by the richest boss on earth. You could become the poorest pauper in a matter of time, says Ortega, because it is the choices that you are making. Even what others are contributing may have an influence, but they don't really determine. I mean, you can choose even to be brokenhearted by the guy. He's breaking your heart, but it is a choice you make to accept to have a broken heart. You can decide, I mean, I won't bother. It's a choice. Why? Because choosing not to choose is a choice in itself. So even if you choose not to choose, you have chosen, says Ortega. It is still you. Now, with those with a very religious, quote and unquote background, we find some of this language a bit troublesome, difficult, because then it seems there's no place for the supernatural, or there's no place for divine influence. And that is where some of us can be a bit conscious, because we believe that there is a finger that perhaps plays a role in our lives, you know. But if you are listening to this one, then it means that they are making it necessarily, or most importantly, what you do. So apart from the extreme I have highlighted, you could think of it as a very positive posture to life. You can never ever say it is a done deal. If it wasn't for this, my uncle who left us, If it wasn't for these family people who took our properties, and Camille, I would have become the, and then every day we believe, but if it wasn't for the slave trade and how they took away our gold and this, and Africa power will be this. When will you rise up, Ezekiel? When will you rise up and prophesy? Sort of. And when will you take your destiny in your own hands? And that sounds a bit individualistic, humanistic for a religious perspective. But the other side of it is, when will people take up responsibility, feel responsible, and stop blaming others? They gave you the cause. I didn't choose it, but you accepted it. You are doing it. So you still should feel responsible. This man, I didn't love him. The family people were pushing him, and then you accepted. So now you have to make it work. It is a posture that I believe that is the reason why we want to engage it, to see the good that we can take from the philosophy and critique the part that we think should be clarified. Okay. So the man says the extra natural part, which actually defines who you are, is an aspiration. It's a project of life. Therefore, it is not fixed. It keeps changing. It all depends on your choices. However, he wants to tell us that those choices are free. The choices are free. And so we will have a challenge if it turns out that the choices were compelled. I want you to think through. If you were born into a poor, home where they don't value education, a cultural system that doesn't think women should do school and all that, you may have choices, but perhaps the choices may be limited. Okay? So if the choices are limited, how free is a choice that is compelled? How free is a choice that I don't have an option not to choose? Forcing me to choose, does that become a free choice? Think about it. Okay, now some things to do to help you understand the text and then to see the practical relevance of this brief summary I've given you on Ortega's Man Has No Nature. Read the last paragraphs of the reference. What distinguishes man from natural things? Man has what? History. Things have nature, but man has history. You can talk about what a person was in the past. That one go fit talk. But what he will be, I'm addressing students now. You never know. Our current president, another had classmate, the Venerable Kofi Annan of blessed memory now, had classmates. You think their class, I was telling my philosophy, my critical thinking class, you think if Kofi Annan's class 2 teacher knew that he's going to be the world president, so to speak, at the time that Kofi Annan was sitting in front of her in the class there, say 2 plus 2, then maybe we even say 2 plus 2 is 17. Then you get a knock from the teacher. You think the teacher knew that this brother was going to rise through the ranks one day and become a Kofi Annan? She would have tried to give a knock? No. So it means we have a life full of various possibilities. It is just the past that you can know about me. As soon as I attain that, it has become part of my history. Now I still have options available to me. There is nothing that is impossible. The poor, orphan, sick, what's the other thing? Unhealthy, all unkempt brother of yesterday can be the chief, the greatest person. I don't know what you count as great, but multi-billionaire, or is it financial, is it religiously great, whatever, can be that great person the next day by choice. It might even be by winning a lot. The Esther, poor, whatever, orphan, if you like, of the Bible, by just 1, 2 choices, was found to be the queen. So what? So nothing is impossible. That is the good part I see in the Ortega paper. Nothing is impossible, and all you need is you. But if you asked me, I would have topped up with my religious persuasion. You could also do same and say, you with God, if you believe in God, and you should. Okay. But for his philosophy, he tried to make it so possible for you to see that There is nothing like my mother died and I was raped and then my school fees and this, all those, as soon as they happen to you, they become part of your past. So man has history, but a thing has a nature. It can't be different if it is a thing like the stone. What is true of the stone yesterday will be true of it today and the day ahead. But what is true of human beings, that is man, yesterday, is just the history of the person. So you may know the person to be a prostitute. No apologies. Give yourself time and go again and see. The person might have changed to something else. Choices. And he calls them free choices. Why? Because choice is the only thing that you cannot take from the person. Then could choice be a fixed, unchanging, stable reality about man? Then perhaps he just contradicted himself. I'm giving you a clue. If choice cannot be taken from human being, that it is in the nature of humans to make choices, and so based on that, their nature, quote and unquote, keeps changing. Then choice now becomes that which is fixed, perhaps. Now, the third thing to help your reflection, can you detect a tension in the existentialist argument I just laid you there? 4, which view appeals to your reason better, you as an individual person that I'm engaging now? Which of the two views appeal to you? Is it the view that you are determined by a pre-existent essence, or the view that you are free to create an essence through your rational choice? Which one appeals to your reason? You know, obviously, what the next question will be, and why? That's what some may not want, but we don't want people just making statements because it sounds good in their ears. You should be able to ground your claims that you make. So why? Why would you choose which one? Now, practical reflection question 1. According to Ortega, what makes man unique in the universe is that man is, quote, an entity whose being consists not in what it is already, but in what it is not yet. A being that consists in not yet being. You see, as I'm seated, you know me to be, say, a mother, a lecturer, a friend, pastor, or something. That is what you might know me to be. The next minute, I may become something else by the choices I make. I've said that, positive or negative, hopefully to be positive. The next one, if I'm called and the next minute you hear that I'm the United Nations Secretary General, I would have changed essence. And so you can never say Nancy is this fixed, unchanging essence. That is what Ortega is saying. Because I could be something else again. So man's being, unlike that of the stone, is constantly what? In something. A man is constantly what he or she is not yet. The only time you can completely describe who Nancy is when she's unable to make any other choice again. And if you extend that argument, perhaps in death, it is only when the person stops making choices that you can define him or her by the last thing that he attained for himself. But until then, you cannot talk about a fixed, unchanging essence. Okay, so now the question is, briefly explain what he means by this statement and show how relevant the statement is to a poor, homeless orphan. If you wanted to advise or speak to that homeless orphan, I think in my exam I added who is contemplating suicide. Someone who is a poor, homeless orphan has just been raped and has gotten pregnant and therefore and then has lost an opportunity to study wherever. And the foster home that wanted to take care of me, I've asked him out. We can't take care of you plus your baggage because they think he or she messed up. He or she, she, she messed up. Okay, so here is this lady, all distressed. No one trusts her again. So we thought you were a good girl. Look at you. I'm going to do this. And it is a rape. Rape by a mad person. Not a mentally sick person. Mad. Gone. Started working from top to has come to cross and cross to the next nation is gone. Not coming back. She's so distressed. poor orphan. And so he's contemplating finishing it all. Now, what do you tell this person from Ortega? How relevant is this Ortega reflection, at least as presented to you, to that person? I've given you pages to refer to see. In the text, pages 58 to 59, I'll ask you. Okay, reflection question 2. Oh, how did I put this here? We didn't need that slide up there. The topic up there should be off. We are still on reflection question 2. Ortega believes that man has no nature. This is not informed consent at all. That one up there should be deleted. If by nature we mean a fixed and unchanging essence, he argues rather that it is things that have nature, but man has history. Man's past is fixed and unchanging, but his future is full of various possibilities. I've said all of that. Give a response, my dear parents, that challenges this view. Use illustrations to make your point clearer. Think about it. Are there instances where your past is so bad that it plays a significant role, so significant a role that what Ortega is saying may not work? I mean, you would tire now, why? Sort of whatever you do, the past and its influence on your present and your future seems so overwhelming that it might look like Ortega is just sounding music in your ears. Can you react to that? And then let's see if an Ortegan thinker can respond to you and still sustain the claim that it is all about you and the choices you make, regardless of the past. That is the second reflection question, to help you understand the text. And then now I'll put some questions. These ones are not reflection per se, but to help your navigation of the text. How does Ortega distinguish man's being from that of the stone? Read page 57, paragraph 1. 57 of the text. Check the number if it is still 57, but I'm referring to the text. You get content there. Then 2, what does Ortega mean by the extra-natural part of man? I think even the presentation has touched on that. It's still on the page 57. Questions continued. I think this will be the last. Ortega argues that a person's nature is never fixed and stable, that the nobody of yesterday can become the CEO of today. In his words, man, quote, goes on being, unquote, and what? On being. So I am this, I go on being lecturer. Then the next moment I no longer become a lecturer. In other words, my being changes. And then I take on another being by the choices I make. So now maybe a professor. And the next time, no longer just a professor, but perhaps a United Nations secretary. Then the next minute, I'm not just that, but I'm also a heavenly ambassador. So it can keep going and going and going. It can go up and down, up and down. So, but your being, it keep going on being and what? On being. What in the being of man, according to Ortega, accounts for this continuous dialectical self-invention? Dialectics just means the positive and the negative mixed together to create another. So father and mother blend, a synthesis produces a new being, and the new being and its anti mix together and create a new. So the positives of life, the negative of life together merges to create a new you. You are a combination of all that has happened to you. Your experience, how you yield to people, how you engage people, is a blend of everything that has happened to you. And yet still, because of your extra natural part, you can always change what you are today for the better or the worse. Page 59 throws a bit more light on that. I feel that this is a good content, at least as presented, that will help your life as you philosophize. It's a practical matter for your reflection. This short presentation should help your understanding of Ortega's man has no nature. And man here is a generic word, I said already. This ends presentation 7. Ahead, you would see still a metaphysical question. We will now touch briefly on whether we are free or determined. Is man free? In other words, you freely make all the choices you make, or there is we are determined. If we are determined, then can we hold people morally responsible at all for their actions? If I couldn't have chosen other than what I chose, if I'm stretching like this and my hand blocks your eye, and it is not a free choice, then can I be held responsible for anything at all? If my life and its decisions and everything about me is determined, can I then be morally responsible? Remember morality. We started that. Can I be held morally accountable, responsible for the supposed actions that I took? If it was done by me, yes, but it wasn't freely done, can I then be held responsible? Don't be in a hurry to say, hey, you have to hold the person responsible. Slow down. Because if you have a certain persuasion, we hold people responsible for their actions. We say that he shouldn't have done that. If I look at your marks and I write 71 when I know that I got 93, and then you ask me, I say, well, what will be, will be. Then if it is meant to be, it will be. How can we then hold people responsible for what has been said already? Digrapher. We're going to engage that philosophically. And I think we'll have another interesting philosophical discussion. Hope to see you in the course of the week for your various groupings. Have a wonderful week and decide to be happy regardless. Take care.